Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this Facebook Live discussion with Bishop Michael Sheridan of the Diocese of Colorado Springs. Before we get started, we would like to go over the format of tonight's event. As you may know, we invited people to submit questions for Bishop Sheridan in advance through email, and many of you responded. Bishop Sheridan will answer those questions first. Then we will move on to any questions posted on Facebook. We ask that each question be submitted only once and that language be respectful and appropriate. In order for Bishop Sheridan to answer as many questions as possible in the time allotted, similar questions will be grouped together. And now, here is Bishop Michael Sheridan.
Good evening, everybody. This is the first one of these that I've ever done, and I wish that my debut on this could be on a happier topic. But what we're going to talk about tonight is real. It's horrendous. We can't ignore it or pretend it didn't happen, and we have to try to come to what we're going to do about this. Whether I, as a bishop, or you, as lay faithful, we'll talk about that. But let's begin. I'll get to the questions in just a moment. To my way of looking at it, we had 3 bombshells dropped in a very short time. In the middle of August, we learned of the report of the grand jury of the state of Pennsylvania, who had investigated 6 of the dioceses in Pennsylvania. And it was terrible to hear about. I didn't read the whole thing. I read parts of it. And those of you who did, they didn't pull any punches. They didn't try to use euphemisms. And what was in there was almost the stuff that pornography is made of. It was awful to know what was done by priests to so many young people. Granted, it covered 70 years, but that doesn't make any difference. This is what was going on in the church in Pennsylvania for all of those years, and thank God that the Attorney General of Pennsylvania actually looked into this and brought it to light. None of this can be kept hidden anymore. Everything must be brought to light. Now, that's the first bombshell. Right on the heels of that, we learned that Theodore McCarrick, Archbishop McCarrick, had himself been an offender, had himself abused young men, as well as in at least one case, a minor, but young men who were giving their lives to the church. They were seminarians. They wanted to be priests, and I can only presume they wanted to be holy priests. They wanted to serve the church in the best way they possibly could. And McCarrick used his power, and it was great power. I mean, he is arguably, even though retired, the ranking hierarch in the church in the United States, that he used his power to, I'm sure in some cases, destroy the vocations of some of those men. Even though some of them may have been ordained, surely their lives had been changed by his assault on them. And then finally, we know too of the publication of Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano's testimony, the former apostolic nuncio, the ambassador of the Vatican to the United States, in which so many more names were mentioned, more accusations were made. Now, maybe I should say up front, if there are questions about that, the authenticity of it, the accuracy of it, I can't answer that. But I'll tell you, we should get to the bottom of it. The Archbishop has made accusations and claims that he says can be verified through documents both in the Vatican and at the nunciature in Washington. And I can only hope and pray and add my own voice to those who already have raised theirs, those must be investigated. I don't know how many of them are true. I don't know how many of them may be emotional reactions to things, but we can't set that one aside. So there we are, dealing with these three bombshells that have exploded in our church. And we have learned about young people whose lives were destroyed, by the predation of priests who presumably had dedicated their lives to the service of the church, dedicated their lives to protecting and nurturing and raising in the faith these young men. So I will move now to some of the questions, or to all of the questions really, that have been sent in. As Veronica said, we tried to group them together. Many of them were virtually the same question. We didn't want to be too repetitive. So we'll take these, and then we'll see if others come in. Okay. The first question is an important one, and I'm glad it was asked. What is this diocese doing right now to prevent clergy sexual abuse and keep our seminarians safe? Well, I'll go beyond seminarians to keep all of our young people safe. We are doing now, and this is very important, we are doing now what we have been doing now for almost 20 years, since 2002, when the bishops gathered in Dallas to produce what's come to be known as the Dallas Charter for the protection of children and young people. And in this diocese, and it's been well documented, advertised. It's on our website. You read about it in, I think, every issue of our diocesan paper, that any accusation against a cleric in this diocese, and we would go beyond that, anyone who is employed by the church or serves the church as a volunteer, any accusation is taken very seriously. Our office here, our Office of Child and Youth Protection, is doing a tremendous job. And I want to say, I don't mean this in a defensive way, but I want to say just a couple of weeks ago, our diocese was audited by professional auditors, and we have a report of complete compliance with all of the articles of the charter. Without getting into too much detail, if an accusation is made that has any level of credibility to it, we immediately refer it to law enforcement. We report it to the police. The priest who is accused is asked to step aside from any ministerial activity until this matter is really looked into, studied carefully, and then that is carried through. That's carried through to the very end. All of our priests, all of our employees, our deacons, our parish volunteers, anyone who has any regular contact with children in this diocese must have a criminal background investigation. They must undergo significant training that we provide, training in child protection, training in looking for those clues that perhaps someone might even be abusing them. They might be neglected in some way. And that training then is updated year after year, so that all of our employees and volunteers, our priests, our deacons, myself, I do that too, are very well trained on what to do and certainly what not to do when it comes to our relationships, our associations with children and young people. And I want to take this opportunity to thank and to congratulate not only those in our office here who are in charge of this protection program, protection of children and young people, but to thank all of those faithful employees and volunteers in all of our parishes who make sure that everything is done completely and properly in the parish with regard to their own the clergy, employees, and volunteers. So there it is. That's in summary what we do to keep our young people safe. Kind of a follow-up question to that someone said in, it says this: is any money coming out of the parish offertory or the diocesan annual appeal to fund payouts to victims of sex abuse? Many of you may know we're a young diocese. We're just coming on to our 35th birthday. We were established as a diocese in 1984. And since then, we've only had one accusation that was credible, and it was immediately attended to according to the steps that I just mentioned. The priest was taken away from ministry. He was a priest on loan from another diocese. His own bishop removed his faculties. We reported it to the police and ourselves. We investigated this very, very carefully. The case went to criminal trial. The priest was acquitted, but still received the penalty of having committed a misdemeanor, because in his relationship with this 17-year-old young man, there was liquor and marijuana exchanged. But we did a fine job of that. That's it. That's the one and only credible accusation we've had in our history. And so I can honestly say we've never paid anything. We've never had to pay anything. We've never paid anything to keep an accuser quiet, nothing like that. Now, of course, we have attorneys, and as every diocese has, we pay attorneys to help us and things like this, but nothing has come from our diocesan treasury to, as they say, pay off anyone who has made an accusation of sexual abuse. So I'm very happy. I'm very proud of our priests, of our own priests, who conduct themselves in a way that is most appropriate around young people. There's a question, and this is on everybody's lips, and I wish I could answer it. Why has it taken so long for these crimes to come to light, particularly cases like that of Archbishop McCarrick? Everybody has, I guess I do too, my own speculation. This is what we must come to know as best we can. We need to investigate the McCarrick case objectively, not bishops investigating it, not the Pope, but as the president of our own Conference of Bishops has said, by a committee, a board, a team of lay professionals who will dig into all of these things, because it's my belief that unless we know why this happened, how could it be covered up for so long? How could it be hidden? I think it's going to be more difficult to prevent it in the future. So were people protecting Archbishop McCarrick? Was it just so secretive that nobody knew? I don't know. The follow-up question to that somebody had, is it due to clericalism and priests wielding too much authority over lay people? Well, clericalism is usually defined as a sense of entitlement that a cleric has. I'm a priest, I'm a bishop. I sort of stand apart from the rest of people, maybe even above the law, because I've given my life to the church. There's some things I should get back. That's an attitude of clericalism. Was that at work there? Could very well be. Clericalism is what very often moves clerics in the church to exercise an authority and a sense of power that the Lord himself denounced. Don't Don't exercise your authority like the scribes and the Pharisees who lord it over people who boss them around. That's not authority as it should be practiced by a Christian. So yes, clericalism, I'm sure, figured into it. I think very much so in our church as a whole because of the culture in which we live. The sense that we've come to that really nothing is objectively right, nothing is objectively wrong. It's only what I think is right. It's only what I think is wrong. Now, of course, that's just beyond anything that the Catholic Church teaches. But we ought not to think that as Catholics we haven't been affected by that kind of secularism and that what Pope Benedict called the dictatorship of relativism. Everything is relative, and things are only right or wrong if I think they're right or wrong. I think there has been over the last 50 years a tremendous diminishment of the kind of holiness that ought to be lived by everyone in the church, especially those who have been given leadership through ordination in the church. So there are a lot of reasons, more than just one, but I think those are two. I think we abandoned. I think we turned away from our vocation to holiness, to live really lives of holiness, lives of integrity, and we bishops and priests to live lives after the model of the Good Shepherd who would lay down his life for his sheep. There's some of that I think has been lost, and we need to rededicate ourselves to that. A question, will the diocese cooperate with outside investigators, such as the State Attorney General? We have always, as I tried to mention, we have always cooperated with law enforcement, and because we just have absolutely nothing to hide in this diocese, and so I suppose if the Attorney General or whoever wanted to see those records appropriate that are relative to this kind of thing, I don't know that we would have any problem with that, because we have absolutely nothing to hide. One of the questions says, it seems like requiring priests to remain celibate is contributing to this problem. Wouldn't it make sense to get rid of priestly celibacy? Well, I do not think it's that easy. In fact, I don't know that celibacy really has anything to do with it. Look, the great majority of bishops and of priests, celibates, are living holy lives of celibacy, as they have throughout most of the history of the church. We know, of course, that I think most of the cases of child sexual abuse are perpetrated by married men. I don't really think celibacy it is. We have to rededicate ourselves to living that celibacy in an integral and in a holy way, recognizing that it's not just something we have to do. We have to refrain from sex. We have to not be able to get married. That's not what celibacy is. Celibacy is a beautiful charism that is given to those who are ordained, and if embraced, it makes our lives as priests very much easier, I would say. Not only easier, but it lifts us up to where we can really be spiritual fathers, if not biological fathers, spiritual fathers to all in the church. So I don't think it's as simple as saying let's let priests get married and everything will be okay. This may be the most important question that we received. How can Catholics in the pews, that lay faithful, keep their faith in light of these scandals? How can their trust be restored? Let me say something about that second question. I think trust is restored only when those who have broken trust begin to demonstrate very clearly that they're now living lives that can be trusted. They can be trusted. Isn't that how it is for any of us? If someone we love, we admire, we respect breaks trust, it's only when those people, when we bishops, when we priests are very, very clear, very, very clear with people, we are determined to live holy, celibate lives. And then I hope, I pray that trust can be restored. But look, I know that the faith of many, many good people has been all but destroyed, and perhaps for some destroyed. I get that. I understand that. But here's what I'd like to say. And I think it's something you probably heard already within these weeks in which so many people have been talking about this. Our faith is in Jesus Christ. And our faith is in his mystical body, the church which received the gift of the Holy Spirit at Pentecost, in which we proclaim as a holy church each time we recite the creed. Doesn't mean everybody in the church is living a life of holiness, but the church is holy, and certainly Jesus Christ is the Holy One. And I just have to say that's where my faith is. Yes, I'm rocked when I hear about things like this. I'm not saying it doesn't make any difference to me. Please don't get me wrong. But I cannot imagine turning away from the Catholic Church, the mystical body of Christ, the community of salvation, the place where I receive the sacraments that help me to grow in holiness, that lead me to heaven. That's me, and I certainly would encourage that of everyone. You know, if there's anybody watching this who has doubted whether or not Satan, the devil, is real, I hope you know he is now. Now, I'm not just blaming this, the devil made him do it. There were bishops and priests who cooperated with the evil one in perpetrating this. The devil, of course, is behind all of this. And if our response is to say, well, I'm leaving the church, the devil has won. Because for him, this is not just about having awful things, horrendous things done to young people. It's about holding that up and letting the rest of the church see it and say, okay, I quit. I'm gone. I'm out of here. Then he has really won. We know that the church will never be destroyed. Jesus promised that. Could it become much, much smaller? Yes, it could. And there have been times in our history where just that thing has happened. But we can't let Satan win this. We can't let him drive us away from the community of our salvation, drive us away from the sacraments, which we absolutely need in order to live holy lives. So, yes, we've all been really just knocked in the gut over this. And yes, it's affected me. It's affected other good bishops and priests that I know. But don't let the devil have his way in the end. What can you all do? We do lots of things. And the first thing, and please just don't take this as some sort of, pious fluff. Please pray. Please pray that our priests, our bishops, indeed everyone in the church will seriously come to be renewed in holiness, to live holy lives. I think in the end that's going to be the real answer. Yes, we're going to put in mechanisms that are going to make sure not only that priests but we bishops are acting the way we should be acting, and good. That's good. We need that, but it's not enough. That's not enough. We want to embrace again the great gift of our baptism, our belonging to the body of Christ, and that's what's going to finally, I think, turn this around. A couple of more questions came in. I haven't had a chance to look at them. Is child abuse a defrocking offense? Meaning, if a cleric is found guilty of child abuse, can he be returned to the lay state? You can't unordain someone, but you can return them to the lay state so that they never live and practice as priests again. Yes, that can happen. That's exactly what has happened in many cases. So yes, there's a yes to that. Jesus told us to forgive 7 times 77. Have we forgiven those beasts who pretended to be priests and bishops too many times? Well, we're right. We are called to forgiveness. It's one of the hardest things to do right now, isn't it? To forgive those priests and bishops. Although I would hope that they are repentant. Anybody who is truly repentant, we know God forgives, and what a wonderful thing it would be if we could forgive too. That doesn't mean that the punishments that come from those crimes are just done away with. Not at all. Not at all. But we should pray that that they will be repentant, that the Lord will forgive them, and that salvation will be theirs too. A question, and I think this fits into what I was saying before. Restoring, well, you have to be of a certain age to remember the ember days that came periodically throughout the church year, special days of fasting and penance and prayer. The prayer to St. Michael, the archangel. I'll tell you now, and if any of our priests are listening to this, maybe they're hearing it for the first time. I really I want that prayer to St. Michael to be reintroduced into our parishes. Pope Leo XIII mandated that prayer back in the late 19th, early 20th century, and it went away. Not the prayer, but the mandate itself went away after the Second Vatican Council. Yes, I believe that, and so many other prayer. Call upon the saints. Call upon our Blessed Mother, who with her Son wants nothing other than to see this sin come to an end. But yes, please know that these kinds of prayers we will be looking at. It says, can you please address the problem of homosexuality in the clerical ranks as a contributing factor to this scandal? Well, even though those who are given to political correctness want to avoid this, I think the studies that were done not too long ago by the John Jay College studies of the causes, the extents of this abuse by priests in the United States revealed very clearly that even though the term pedophilia was used, and in some cases it was pedophilia, that is the abuse of a prepubescent child. The great majority of these were abuse of older minors, shall we say, 16-year-old, 17-year-old, that boys by priests who were men. These were acts of homosexuality, homosexual acts, which of course the church clearly says are sinful, whether they are done by a priest or a cardinal or anybody. So yes, and that's why the Vatican has responded to this in saying that any candidate for the seminary who has really a deep-seated same-sex attraction must not be admitted to the seminary to prepare for the priesthood. Now let's be clear about this. I hope nobody is thinking, and I'm certainly not saying, that anyone who has same-sex attraction is automatically a predator, is out there abusing and raping young men. Of course, that's not true. But yes, homosexuality, and that has already been recognized as something that we have to be aware of in admitting men to seminary study. How do you address this abuse issue with someone you're trying to evangelize, it sounds like help to bring into the Catholic Church? And she just can't seem to get by this. Well, again, not a surprise that she can't get by it. The only way I know to effectively evangelize, it goes back to what I was saying before. When the evangelist is clearly a man or a woman of real holiness, who loves God, who is filled with the love of God for him, this can begin to change people and to help them know, as I said before, the church they are entering is not asking them to put their faith in a pope or a cardinal or a bishop or a pastor. That's not the object of our faith. The object of our faith and the Son of God, Jesus Christ, the head of his church. And those will not fail us. They will not fail us. God help us, many people in the church will fail us and have failed us throughout history. But I don't know how I would approach it other than that, because I completely understand how these horrible revelations have affected people. But let's not give up. Let's continue to show people Jesus Christ in our own lives. One person said, I love the Pope, would like to hear from him on this subject. Is there any push among the bishops for him to respond to this? Well, I mean, he has responded. I don't know if he's responded to the liking of everyone. You might have heard that he has called the president of every Episcopal conference in the world to Rome in February to deal with this subject. He's, of course, made it known that this sort of behavior is not to be tolerated, that it's sinful. He's given that response, but maybe I'm going out on a limb here, but I'll tell you, I hope that it's more than just that. As I said, we're asking as a conference of bishops that a board of lay professionals be established by the Holy See who are going to look into all of this, because it's only when we've uncovered the truth of all of this can we really, I think, deal with it adequately. And there are just a lot of things we don't, at least I don't know the answer to. But I think our conference, and I will do all I can personally to push this, to make sure that we get the answers that we need, not just for the sake of getting the answers, but because I truly believe that when we get the answers to these, that will help us to deal effectively with them. Veronica, do we have more on here? We've endured clergy scandals for 20 plus years. Well, actually, we've endured them for a lot longer. Do you think the church will now take this seriously? You know, yes. I mean, yes, there's the simple answers I've been saying. Yes, I think, I am confident that this is being taken very, very seriously by the bishops of this conference, who I think are going to settle for nothing less than what we talked about, in a way of oversight of the clerics of the church by professionals who are not clerics themselves. We took this seriously, you know, in 2002 when that scandal broke in Boston. We took it very seriously, and the truth is, since then, the number, I'm not saying it's gone away, but the numbers of credible accusations of abuse began to fall precipitously. So yes, what we're doing is making a difference, and I can only believe that what we will do now with regard to bishops in the church will be taken seriously.
Final question.
This one?
Yes.
Well, I think, no, we talked about that one. These things are pouring in. I'm trying
Okay.
yeah, I think we've dealt.
Did you do?
Yep,
Yes.
talked about that one.
No, and I think that's.
Veronica's feeding me these questions. I can see there are tons of things on the side of my screen here. I haven't really been reading them, and it looks like we may not have come close to answering all the questions, but we'll come back if we need to do this again. It's not an easy thing for me to talk about. It's not an easy thing to hear about, but because we take it seriously, we're not gonna sweep it under the rug. So I think maybe for tonight we're gonna call an end to it, and I thank you for joining us. I hope you've at least some of the main questions that have been coming to me have been answered. And please, if you have ideas for future Facebook Live events, please send them in. And here's where you can send them. Social media, one word, social media at diocs.org. Social media at diocs.org. Thanks again. God bless you. Good night.